You ever been in a situation where a critical piece of information just didn't land? Maybe an important policy change got lost in a company-wide email, or maybe a vital safety announcement wasn't seen by everybody who needed to see it, and that led to some costly mistakes, or even worse, a safety hazard. Well, today we're talking with Sean Matthews, President and CEO of Visix, who has seen firsthand how effective communication, or the lack of effective communication, can sometimes make or break business initiatives. Stay with us as we explore why digital signage deserves a seat at the executive table, right alongside your CRM and your accounting software. Thanks for talking to me today, Sean.
Hey, it's good to be here, Derek. I appreciate it as always having me on the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you everybody out there for listening to this episode of Digital Signage Done Right, why digital signage is mission critical. Don't forget you can subscribe and share and review, and you can follow along with a transcript on the Visix website, which ought to also have some helpful links as well. Whether you're using digital signage or not, our podcast gives you practical tips for communications and content to better engage your audience. I'm Derek DeWitt. Welcome to Digital Signage Done Right. Okay, so the real purpose of this episode today is really to debunk what I think is a common misconception. I think a lot of people still view digital signage as just a creative endeavor. You know, it's something like crafting a visually appealing PowerPoint or designing a marketing graphic. That's all it really is.
Well, that's not really the case, Derek. I mean, for those of us that have been at this a long time, 25 years, let's say, for example, these displays were historically used for public service announcements, things that you would see in a student center on a college campus. That's really kind of where it came from, at least for us in the organizational communication business. But the reality is today, it is a real-time information sharing platform, right, that distributes important, relevant, timely information out to any number of targeted audiences, right? And so these pieces of information, these data analytics, this data construct that's been transformed into information that has a meaningful impact, that is being delivered in real time throughout college campuses, organizations, manufacturing plants, and affecting the workplace experience, the visitor experience, the student experience, you name it, right? It's having a profound impact there. And its integration with any number of business systems, whether it be event management systems or entire platforms based on that, hoteling systems for booking spaces in real time and conveying who is sitting where on a particular day, and even real-time production metrics that are affecting assembly line and shipping decisions are all being influenced by this real-time messaging.
I do think there are still some executives out there who maybe just kind of think it's just kind of a facilities problem or a marketing problem. Like you said, it was originally announcements. They kind of replaced posters. And I think maybe for some of the more old-fashioned folks out there, or people who haven't really been in an environment where there's a major digital signage presence, they might still think of it in this way. But this is a completely inaccurate perception.
Yeah, and I think that those folks have not really been exposed to the power of what these displays have within, if there's not been a lot of integration to other data sources within the enterprise, right? And so I think production metrics is a great example. When those types of metrics are affecting assembly line productivity, which could affect the bottom line for an organization, that's where you begin to see the power of these displays. And it's not just a feel-good message about someone's anniversary or their birthday.
Right. Like this is a scalable thing now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're talking about, thousands of endpoints, whether it be, large form factor displays, video walls in a huge shipping environment, right? Where tractor trailer drivers, shippers, forklift drivers, they're all seeing this data in real time. All the way down to the mobile device, right? Particularly when you're thinking about booking a space and you want to confirm that that space is going to have your name on it when you get there.
Yeah. So let's kind of get into the core of why this is really should be a primary mission critical consideration for organizations, certainly medium size and up, but I think even smaller organizations. How does it directly impact internal comms?
Well, the impact is really it's multifaceted because it does have an impact on overall morale because you do have the Orwellian effect of putting people on TV, right? And so, it's your birthday, it's your anniversary. It's a huge success that your team delivered, right, to the organization, which affected the industry, which impacted the bottom line, right? So there is this cultural communication piece of the offering, which then, of course, does bleed into more informative things about what's going on in a building, in a room, in a team meeting, right? You see these event management type of infrastructure that is not only affecting general awareness of what's happening, but it's also affecting how facilities managers manage spaces because the data that they pull from these meeting platform systems helps them understand what technology needs to be in those rooms and why certain rooms are being used over others. And then, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, the idea of impacting productivity with quota, metrics and performance against certain strategic objectives. I mean, it's really, impacting the overall, culture at large.
And it really does reach into pretty much almost every aspect: operational efficiency, sales, even customer experience. It can, if you have public-facing digital signage.
Yeah, I mean, particularly if you're promoting a new service or product offering to visitors that pass by, they're not in your facility every day, but they learn about what's going on in the organization without 120 PowerPoint slides in a deck, right? They can see real time, high end production type messaging. It can often be AI augmented using other tools to produce that sort of material quickly and efficiently. But it does impact that visitor experience because it's not stuff that they get to see or maybe read about your organization daily. And it doesn't matter if it's a corporate environment or even a campus environment. Who knew that this particular school had the number one equestrian team in the country, for example, right? Yeah, that's where you're seeing its impact.
And I think for people who go on to a campus or to a hospital or any physical location, too, obviously, and we talk about this a lot on here, wayfinding. Wayfinding is digital now, and it's much more powerful. It's much more flexible. There are a lot more things you can do with it, and it's kind of more efficient than printed signs. It just is.
Yeah, a hospital is a great example. We've all been to, a hospital environment. They're campuses that are built over time and they've grown exponentially. Buildings that were one story are now 7 stories, right? And there's lots of, follow the blue line to the yellow line to the red line to get to radiology, right? Like that's how they work. And, back in the day, you could certainly even take a photograph of one of these static signs. But now you can take the entire journey with you on your phone. You scan a QR code. It's a universal platform, HTML. You take it with you. And in many cases, the little blue dot will follow you wherever you go and help guide you to your destination. So, I mean, the wayfinding thing is just, it's amazing. It's no longer just a simple kiosk that you look up the Cinnabon in the airport, right? Like now you can be led to Cinnabon without having to smell your way there.
That'd be a great tagline. Digital signage wayfinding, better than a nose. Now, for C-suite people who are also focused on ROI, I think that's another place where digital signage has a lot of power. I think we can frame digital signage less as an expense and more like a strategic investment because there are measurable returns.
Yeah, and I'll start with first. Digital signage used to be a very expensive endeavor. It did. The cost of displays were quite high, the media players, the licensing. It was very expensive. But as the adoption curve progresses over time, there's been much more commoditization. And of course, there's not been as much of a requirement for capital expenditure versus operational expenditure now that everyone has gone to the cloud, right? So the cost to employ this technology is far less than what it used to be, right? And it fits into the operating budget. And when you think about that operating budget and it affecting productivity and organizational culture on a daily basis, when you just do the math, you can see that, wow, this is having an effect on our enterprise. Now, you might ask, how is he measuring that? Well, it is actually a good deal more difficult in operational environments like manufacturing without tying the delivery of those messages back to the metrics, right? You have to be logical and sensible about how you make those connections. And you will see, just for comparison's sake, in the retail world, there's a lot of tie back to point of sale transactions, back to the ads that were delivered at the time, right? And that's a good deal more maybe compelling for some of those enterprises, and they use retinal scans to prove how many people looked at a particular display, right? And how many ads ran in that period of time, and what was the boost or the bump in sales in that same window. Not quite the same in the productivity realm that we live in, but creating messaging and tying back things like QR codes to the success of particular campaigns and having planned campaigns, that's all tied to the measurable success of this sort of technology.
Yeah, that's true. And, like you said, the metrics, there are tons and tons of metrics now that can sort of hang out in the back end. You can kind of pick and choose which ones you want. And I think of like KPIs, key performance indicators. We often talk about how you can display them and they can update in real time. They're tied to some kind of a system, even something as simple as a spreadsheet. When that's updated, the information on the screens is also updated, but it's much prettier than a spreadsheet. And yet at the same time, it occurs to me that so while, say, the managers or the plant production folks or even the people on the floor, they're seeing these KPIs and this real-time stuff going on, it's actually doing dual duty because the C-suite and the managers are also seeing that information unfold in real time and they have a record of it. It's really a one-stop shop now. Everybody's getting the same information at the same time as it occurs. Let's go.
You see in the C-suite individuals looking at, real-time dashboards, charts, graphs, all that kind of stuff related to productivity. But those charts aren't always shared, throughout the enterprise. And when you think about those charts, not every employee is into the bars and charts and graphs and all that kind of stuff, right? Like I've delivered my fair share of those charts over time. And, some people just kind of roll their eyes at them because it's just not compelling to them. It doesn't really maybe have an effect on them. But what does have an effect on them are using these displays for things like leaderboards, right? And leaderboards can be about individual performance and or team or group performance, right? And, when you think about, the basic level of, individuals against quotas in sales, for example, right? So not only did Derek perform well this day, this week, this month, this quarter, but the entire team did. And the CFO sees Derek's name and Sean's name and other names, right? And they start to associate performance with those people. And ultimately they get introduced to Derek in a very large organization. They're like, oh man, I've seen your name on the leaderboard. And that conversation would have never happened. It just wouldn't have happened, right? And same at the team level, sort of pitting teams against each other, shift 1 versus 2 versus 3, for example, right? It does create competition that bodes well for performance.
So if we look at, say, a robust digital signage system compared to, earlier, more traditional communication methods, it seems like the digital signage is far more impactful and far more efficient because you can just do so much more with it. Real-time updates is obviously one of them, but just even the way you parcel out the information.
Yeah, and one of the big things, of course, is we talked about this sort of television Orwellian thing, right? You can do so much more visually on a large form factor display than you can on a small mobile device, right? Yes, you can deliver a lot of tailored content and you can subscribe to certain things on your mobile device, your feeds, right? But you're buying into just what's being algorithmically delivered to you, right? It's much more difficult to just receive, in mass communication about what's going on in the business that you work in, right? And find that interesting and compelling. So using these large form factor displays to create this, really robust visual and interactive content, man, that just has like such an effect on those passing by. And yeah, we can go down to the individual tied through teams and delivering the same messaging that you see on these displays and reinforcing it through a Teams channel or a Teams feed. You can do all of that, right? But still the fundamental, most compelling impact is on the large form factor display.
Mm-hmm. Sure, sure. Okay, so let's say we agree. Yeah, this is mission critical. You really should have digital signage in some capacity. So, what does that mean practically for how organizations should approach it in terms of investment and management and integration?
Well, practically, it has to start. I don't want to say at the very top, but certainly at the C-suite level, there has to be some buy-in at the top and push it down through the organization because you're going to need facilities to integrate this technology into the walls of the building itself, right? You're going to need IT to incorporate whatever policies and procedures that need to be in place in order for media players or signs to connect to the internet to get news and weather data, right? Data that might be coming from other sources. You're going to need the right APIs to exist on the back end so that we can pull data from event management schedules or facility management schedules. You're going to need buy-in from marketing to create a look and a feel that is commensurate with the organization itself, right? It's got to look like the brand and feel like the brand. Then you're going to need some HR components in there to help contribute to the cultural reinforcement in that environment, right? And so it's obviously best that you have a CMS, a content management system that is cloud-based. They almost all are these days, with rights and roles that allow people to contribute to the process and don't stymie that contribution with a bunch of layers of approval, but yet instill enough discipline in approval layers so that incorrect information doesn't end up on those screens. So it's a multi-layered process that involves a lot of people. But if you're expected to have a really profound impact, then you're going to need to involve all of those folks and build a culture of contributing to that content delivery across the entire organization.
Yeah, I'd almost say it sounds like you have to get all these stakeholders and all the people who are going to be in some way, shape, or form involved with this system. Like they have to also get into the mindset of like, this is an important thing. This isn't just a side thing to do when I have a little extra time. This is a key mission critical thing that this organization needs to survive and thrive as we approach the, second quarter, Q2 of the 21st century.
Yeah. And, it doesn't matter if you're on a college campus and you're working remotely and you don't walk in the building every day and see these messages. It's important to know that there are others, maybe not you, because with so many people working in hybrid environments, it's easy to forget that students, for example, they go to buildings every day. Yes, there are lots of online classes and components to that hybrid education environment, but there are students on that campus every day, and they're passing by these signs. And what better way than to reach out and touch them with this message, from these large displays and augment that, on the smaller display. So when they log into their academic management system like Blackboard or something like that, they see the same messages being delivered there that they see in these buildings. It's like taking roadside billboards and delivering the same message inside your car, as you pass by the billboard, right? Like you want to double tap the message, all the way across the spectrum if you can.
I mean, I can see billboard people would be like, that would be the best. As a car drives by, some kind of device, RF transmitter on the billboard and on the car, like the car grabs it and then they just take the billboard with them. Except that, like in Atlanta, you've got billboards up the wazoo. By the time you'd gone 20 miles, you'd have, I don't know, 30 billboards in your car.
Well, and of course, I think about that. The monetization of that would get to be, so competitive that, like, if you really wanted your billboard to stand out, you'd be paying a premium, right, versus the other billboards, right? So
my billboard supersedes all other billboards.
correct, right. And the law firm that is the biggest will get the most billboard, stuff.
The big get bigger, as always. So what would be some red flags that might tell us that an organization is not treating digital signage with maybe the seriousness that it deserves?
Yeah, I think the very first big red flag, and I see this often in client deployments, and it doesn't matter if I go to their facility or I just take a look at some playlists. It is poorly designed content. That is number one. That's the biggest red flag. Number one. Number two would be a lack of integration with any other, data source within the enterprise that's delivering either real-time event information, which is incredibly popular, any type of real-time directory information, any sort of real-time anniversary, birthday, productivity, KPI type information, any of those things. If they're not connecting to sources where the data and information already exist, you're putting a work task back on someone where the task has already been completed, right? So design is number one, integration is number two. Those would be my first two big red flags. And number three would be any sort of lack of saturation, whether they don't have enough displays in key areas, or they've not taken that same display information and delivered it to other parts of their infrastructure, something like a Teams feed, for example, or a Teams channel, or they're not making it mobile through, HTML5 connection or QR scan. I mean, those are the three big red flags, easy ones for me.
And I would add, honestly, having old stuff. Your hardware's not up to date. Your driver's not up to date. You're using, whatever, Access TV version 1. But even the hardware, like, you got to make sure that hardware is up to date and the drivers are up to date, or else it's just not going to work. You do it for your car.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I will say this, being in the world of hardware, and particularly even in the integration of audiovisual and IT and that whole convergence that exists there, hardware is something that costs money. It's typically a capital expense. It ends up on the balance sheet. It gets depreciated, and people make these investments, and you lose sight of the fact that technology, by and large, it might have a 5-year lifespan at best. But the best way to look at that is from a CFO's perspective, which is, what does the depreciation schedule look like? And almost all of these things, Derek, depreciate in a 36-month schedule. So it's only 3 years. And when you look at displays, you can't even put them on a depreciation schedule because they cost less than $3,000 or whatever your schedule looks like. They all vary. But most, if it's more than 500, it might make a schedule, it might not. But for many people, their phones last 2 to 3 years tops, because they drop, they're subject to abuse, and they just degrade over time from a technology perspective.
True. And yet, like, trying to imagine, I'm a lower upper class parent. I've got my kids. They want to go to this school. One of them's interested in computer stuff. I walk onto campus, we're going to go check out this school, and they've got digital signage, but it's not even flat screen TVs. It's old, cathode ray TVs. Like, I just turn right around and walk out the door, get in the car, and go someplace else, because I would be like, these guys aren't serious. They're not being serious at all.
Yeah, there is definitely a component to that. I mean, I hate to say that sort of keeping up with the Joneses approach, but it does exist. And, if you've been on a college campus in the past 5 years, for example, often these tours start off at student centers, and there are fitness centers that rival the biggest chains in the world, right? Like, I mean, amazing facilities, right? And so, coupled with that, you'll see a lot of televisions. I'm just calling it a television, flat screen displays, but you'll see flashy technology everywhere. And it's a compelling component to their investment in the student experience on that campus.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen over the years, and you've certainly seen since all this began way back when, how this whole space has changed radically, and it's changing really all the time now. We're seeing more and more stuff getting integrated, new technologies, new clever ways to use messaging in a digital way. 10 years ago, there were smartphones, but there was really no way to get that stuff on your smartphone easily. Now it's easy. So we're seeing all these changes occur more, I'd say every 18 months or so, there's some new oh, wow thing that comes along. What do you think are some of the emerging trends or future things that are coming? I know in the past, you and others have mentioned voice operated signage. You really think that's going to take off? You think there'll be other things?
I do think that one's pretty tough, Derek. I mean, everyone is so accustomed to things like Alexa and Siri, right? They just want to talk to devices. And it's still the biggest challenge is in public spaces. There's so much ambient noise, surrounding those displays. It's difficult. We pioneered some of that work almost a decade ago, and certainly tried to pull it out of the closet again during the pandemic. Right, it's still difficult. Using parabolic tools help, but that one's pretty tough. I do think that one of the emerging things, and it's not that it's an emerging technology, it's the elimination of a certain technology, and that is, the avoidance of apps and building stuff into your message delivery that goes to ubiquitous things like the browser, which can take HTML5 from anywhere and almost anything and allows you to take it with you. The idea of app management and app updates and the requirement to download an app, authenticate against the app. A lot of business people like the idea of apps because there's so much analytic data that resides, in app utilization. But the user can't stand the app. Let's say you took a train, I don't know, once every 2 months, right? You lived in an environment where it's a good example. Lots of people take trains every day, but if you lived in a place where you only did it once every 2 months and everything was run by the app, right? Well, when you got to the train station, you had to download the update. Then you had to authenticate. You might have to authenticate first against the app. You forgot your password. You don't know any of this stuff, right? So it becomes a huge inconvenience for you. You're desperately looking around you for the same information, which is on those digital signs about arrivals and departures, et cetera, right? So, the elimination of apps and making accessibility more ubiquitous via other tools, I do believe is an emerging, technology because you can focus on integration, retinal scans, all that kind of stuff. And those may be very future-oriented things. But if you look at real-time stuff today, you can see that even people that we partner with want to enable wayfinding without an app. They want to enable room booking without an app. They want to, enable delivery of messages without an app. That's definitely a trend.
I'm with you. I mean, I look at my phone and I have a ton of apps on there and I use them once every, year. Like, in order to get a good deal, I had to sign up for the Marriott Club. I stay at a Marriott hotel sometimes, sorry. I mean, sometimes I don't want to stay at a Marriott or I'm going, there isn't one or what have you. So now I've got, I don't even know, 15 different hotel chain apps. Some of them I can't even remember what they are. And like you said, I got to update. Now I have to update it. And that's going to take a whole thing and, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, that's, I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you. Some companies are trying to force use of the app. Ryanair, which is a European low-cost air carrier, they just said, we don't do paper tickets anymore. It's all on the app. If you don't have the app, you can't fly. You still buy a ticket, but you're not getting on the plane unless you have our app. And I kind of think, wow, I'm not really a big fan of that.
Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, to reinforce that, there are generational differences in how people treat and respond to certain technologies. And certainly there are generations that are not very adept at app management and password management and all those things. So, you're really making it difficult for those folks to really participate in the message delivery because you've just made it hard. And I hate to say that, I'm not saying that it's easy for certain demographics to also understand that scanning a QR code and taking it with you, what that means, right? So I don't have a super easy answer here, other than the easier you can make it in the process of delivering messaging, the better off you are in gaining adoption and viewership of those messages.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think that's all really interesting stuff. Any final thoughts for any CEOs, CIOs, CFOs out there who are starting to really seriously think about the strategic role of digital signage within their organizations?
Well, I think if you're a C-suite person and you're not thinking about the wall space that you currently have in your environment, and you're going back to fine art and printed posters and those kinds of things, right? You're making a huge mistake. There's an opportunity for you to integrate all of your messaging, all of your metrics, all of your performance indicators, and all of the things that you might use to motivate and encourage people. You can deliver it real time without extra work anywhere throughout your organization, right? From walls to desktops to mobile devices. And as time progresses, you're going to be able to do it with electronic paper in a manner that is so cost effective and so energy efficient that you're going to have even a more profound effect, because you can put it almost anywhere without power or Wi-Fi connectivity. You can just slap it on a wall with 3M command strips.
So I think you can tell digital signage has become way more than just displays with basically electronic versions of posters. It's now a critical system for communication, engagement, and real-world business outcomes. It deserves strategic attention and investment. So start doing that, everybody. I'd like to thank my guest today, Sean Matthews, President and CEO of Visix, for talking to me about why digital signage really is mission critical for just about every kind of organization. Thank you, Sean. As always, your insights, because you're kind of right there on the front lines, are always very stimulating and very interesting.
Well, good, Derek. Thanks for having me. I always enjoy being here. You do a fantastic job of this, and I'm glad that it reaches so many people, and look forward to talking to you soon.
And of course, I'd like to thank everybody out there for listening. For more free stuff, head to resources on Visix.com for guides, videos, and more to help with your visual communications. Please subscribe and share, and contact us for information about our digital signage solutions.